You're listening to Two Babies in a Business, a podcast where Peter and I, pull a topic out of a hat this season, talk about it in relation to being business owners, to being partners, and to being parents. I'm excited. This is our episode to wrap up this season of Two Babies in a Business, the podcast. I think it's been a really fun, wild journey. I feel like if you've listened to these episodes, we've really covered the gamut. I feel like, last time when we talked about infinite and finite, maybe even over the course of this year, as we've been doing this podcast, we were exploring the same things. We for sure covered off marketing. We talked about public relations, but we talked about everything in between. And I think conversations have really helped us solidify our own thoughts about ourselves and the company. So here we are, end of season 2. What are your thoughts?
End of 2023.
Yeah.
So I guess new beginnings. I think part of what we're going to talk about is where our thinking has evolved and what we're planning for 2024 to some extent to help folks, I guess, be part of our journey, and also just to maybe try to help inspire people to think about their own future state and their own infinite possibilities. So why don't we start with you, Christina? What's on deck for you? What's changing? Where are you going from here?
It's so weird, eh? Like, it feels like we're taking this departure, but I had alluded to this in our last episode too, that Two Babies in a Business has been a brand that has been on the side of my desk for a long time. There's been a few times in the course of CIPR where I've tried to find time to stand it up. Some really great employees of past, Jolene, shout out to her, comes to mind in terms of some really great visioning and almost feel like vision boards created around what Two Babies in a Business was and what I bring to the table there. I think back to my first conversation with our business coach. I don't think many people know this, but I really pursued Steve for myself. It wasn't CIPR looking for a business coach. It was Christina Pilarski looking for a business coach, trying to answer a question of what do I want and what do I want to do next. And I'm really happy with where that relationship went and the incredible impact it had on CIPR, because it really in hindsight has shown me that, like, I was nowhere near what I needed to be myself in order to start having a conversation about what was next. So for me, obviously, with what I'm saying, Two Babies in a Business is a brand that I really want to lean into in 2024. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I've been trying to play with some content and figure out what I'm doing there. I want to kind of clean that up, but I really want to lean into what I'm passionate about. And I'm passionate about, working with women on their brands. I'm passionate about being able to share my journey as a mom, as a business owner. And, Two Babies in a Business was almost a funny joke when I made it the handle. It was, you thought of it, Peter. I think it was one day the babies were crawling all over me and I was on a laptop and you said, Two Babies in a Business. And so I'm leaning into that. I think when I look at the podcast will continue. Peter will continue to be a guest because I can't do this without him. But I'm going to lean into having conversations with really amazing women in my network and start to be able to tell their stories and start to be able to share the experiences that we have as working moms. There's a very interesting story that needs to be told there, especially in Canada. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Actually, even before the end of this year, I have a bunch of podcast episodes lined up to record with a bunch of women. So I'm really excited to be kind of leaning into that and just giving myself a voice away from everything else that we do. Again, I think that it's an important brand that I obviously need Peter for. There's no success story in building a business with your husband if the husband is not present. But yeah, I think so. That's Two Babies in a Business. I think we can both talk about CIPR after, but Peter, what's there? We are obviously pre-recording this, but by the time this hits the air, yes, there will have been an exciting announcement. And why don't you remind everyone what that is?
Yeah, so something we've been working on actually for I want to say at least 6 months is really leaning into our passion for the tourism industry and leaning into what's become my new passion slash obsession for artificial intelligence and where that's all going. So we will have launched already by now the Tourism Artificial Intelligence Network. So the Tourism AI Network is really our attempt at bringing the conversation of artificial intelligence to the tourism industry in a more formal way. We've been talking about artificial intelligence in tourism with many of our clients, but I want to expand that. So I guess as Christina kind of goes a little bit down the two babies in a business path, I will be going a little bit more down the tourism AI network path. And so really the tourism AI network is, primarily a media company. It's also going to be a training or it is also a training organization. And importantly for me, and this is really where this finite versus infinite conversation came, is it's going to be a community building organization. I want to build a community of people in the tourism industry who all want to get together, collaborate, join forces, share around, implementation of artificial intelligence in the tourism sector. I'll say one thing that I think has been sort of challenging for me a little bit at the CIPR world, especially mostly because I'm in sales, is that lack of community. I think that you and the staff have more of a community because you deal more kind of collaboratively with our clients all the time, whereas I'm off on my own doing my own thing a little bit. So I'm really excited about it. Obviously, it gives me this opportunity to build this community, build my brand a little bit around some things that I'm passionate about. And it really, to me, also speaks to something that I've been kind of telling you about and talking to you about a lot as we've been having this infinite versus finite conversation, is this idea of going from one to one, which is really, CIPR communications, dealing with one client at a time, sort of, that type of thing, to one to many, right? So maybe now I'm able to go speak in front of a larger group of people. Maybe we do a training session with a 20, 30, 50, 100 people, right? More of this one to many. Maybe we facilitate conversations. Maybe we have a conference and all kinds of things. So I'm super excited about it. It also creates an opportunity for me to build a network beyond us. So as we're launching this in partnership with a few different folks. And I only hope that those partnerships will be able to grow and the community will be able to grow. So yeah, that's the Tourism AI Network. Super, super excited about it. It will have just launched at the time of airing this podcast, but big things coming, big plans in 2024 for us. So super fun.
Yeah, I mean, you've already been out and about. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not, not necessarily under the brand since it's newly launched, but you've been speaking about AI and you've been developing your brand there. And I think it's been really awesome to see you leaning into that. I think, you're excited, and not that you're not excited about other things, but I think it's been really allowed you to grow. And I think one thing I know about you is you value growth and you value being challenged. And I think that learning and staying on top of AI has been interesting for you in that perspective, but also going out and speaking to these big groups. I mean, the most speaking we've done in the last 5, even longer, let's say 10 years, has been together. So this has been really cool to watch you grow and build out your expertise. I think that, to your point, often in this organization you're not the expert. You are the expert, you're the visionary, and you're the driving force behind everything, but this allows you to truly kind of shine as an expert on your own and be front and center there. So I think it's really cool and really exciting. You're going to be launching a podcast as well.
Yes. I believe it probably is going to be called the Tourism AI Podcast. We haven't settled on that exactly yet, but I think that's likely what makes sense. So yeah, and I don't know exactly what the format's going to be, but I think it'll be probably conversations with people in the tourism space around what's happening with artificial intelligence, how they're implementing it, maybe some of the pilot projects we're going to be launching, some of the people we're going to be working with, talking about the experience, talking about risks, talking about changing. It's the cool thing about AI is that I mentioned this in the previous podcast, but literally we are on the very, 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 very beginning of something that's really, really big. And it's literally changing daily. And so it's such a fluid space that I think that just sort of just being able to talk to people and understand where they're coming from, understand how they're trying to implement it or not, or what their conversations are in their company is going to be really dynamic and really engaging. So that is going to be the goal of the podcast. I will be hosting it. I think I may have a co-host. Again, some things haven't been determined as of yet, but I can't wait to launch it, and I can't wait to be talking about. For me, I'll say that I'm a very passionate person. I'm a passion driven person, and so this is sort of a new passion for me, and it really gets me excited. It gets me fired up. My energy levels, I can feel them, are instantly higher when talking about this topic and thinking about this. And it's a little scary because I don't know what's going to happen with AI and how it's going to sort of evolve over time. But I think that's the whole point of the network, is to sort of have those conversations, to create a space for those types of conversations, to create a safe place for people to talk, understand, and really grow together and figure this whole thing out together. So I'm really, really excited about it.
Nice. Yeah, I think there's probably a group of people who are right now going, these crazy people, all of the stuff on their plate, and now they're, leaning into two other initiatives. And to that, I say, hey, if you listen to the last episode or the last few, because I feel like we've been on this tangent for a while, we have made space for this. We have made space for our infinites in the finite. So, with CIPR, nothing's changing there. You still wear that visionary hat. I still wear the integrator hat. You still run sales. I still run operations. What has been absolutely incredible, and I credit the team as well, because we've done a lot of hard work in the past 2 months, 3 months really, in terms of being able to give you and I time to do this. So, at this point, if you dare look at my calendar, you'll see that 2 afternoons a week, I am a bona fide laborer, employee, whatever you want to call it, of the Tourism AI Network. And another 2 afternoons a week, I am wearing the hat of 2 babies in a business and really making space in my calendar for those things to move them forward. And it was really hard at first. I wasn't, I had it in the calendar, but you just occupy yourself with other things. But even in the last few weeks, being able to just have that time and dedicate it, to your point, it gives me energy too. I think that, again, when you're just doing the same thing over and over again and day in and day out, you need to spice it up a bit. And so this has been nice. And I feel myself coming back to CIPR work in those other time slots more energized and more focused. Yeah. And frankly, with more ideas, because now I'm digging into 2 other things that is forcing me to think about everything new again. And it's been able to let me come back to CIPR in a new way. So on the CIPR front, I mean, on both of these podcasts, you're still going to obviously hear about CIPR as we do things, but it's still moving and shaking along too. Continue to follow on CIPR comms and all of those things. What I'll say to you about your AI, I'm kind of all over the place, but if anyone has really enjoyed listening to your AI special broadcast, because you've done a handful of those on 2 babies in a business takeovers, I really think that, if they enjoyed that and hearing about it, tune into yours and follow along there, because that's what you'll be doing too, and really unpacking it. You're going to have a high frequency. I'm not making any promises for you yet, but AI you need to do that.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be frequent and to stay relevant. And I think that, I know that I'm gonna be talking to. I already have kind of a lineup of people that I want to talk to. We've been going. This is not just coming out of the blue, obviously. We've been going down a path for a while, and we've been going deeper and deeper in the AI space, redefining our own agency in the face of AI and what it means, building networks and relationships with all kinds of different interesting people. And so I'm really excited because there's going to be some really amazing experts that we can bring to the table right away. Some of the partners we've been working with, some of the service providers, some of the technology providers, some of the tool providers, really, really cool stuff. So I think it's going to be a very educational podcast. I hope anyways. Certainly, it'll open some doors to some people in terms of knowing things they didn't know, understanding things a little bit differently, listening to the perspectives of people who are pretty deep into this stuff. I mean, I'm not as deep even as some of the people I'm going to be talking to, and I'm pretty deep. I mean, I'm pretty absorbed in the AI world now. And so I think it's going to be great. And we're also launching some surveys. So we want to understand deeply, what the tourism industry thinks about artificial intelligence, how they're lining up for it. We're making partnerships with really cool organizations. So I think there's just going to be a lot there from a content perspective that's going to be really meaty. So I certainly hope that, yeah, people that are interested in the topic take the time. Again, we're not sort of sure about format and how long and all those things, but we'll get there. And I think it's going to be really fun. And I'll just say that, one of the comments you made about, carving time in your calendar, it's an amazing thing. And again, this comes back to me for the conversation we had last time about the finite versus the infinite. When you got this finite mindset, it's like, oh, I'm so busy doing the job I'm doing, and this is my whole calendar gets taken up. It's like, it's an amazing thing that happens when, your calendar will get taken up by whatever's in front of you. And if you sort of focus on the infinite and you block time off for that, then you have less time to do the finite stuff, but you still get it done. It's just like, it's just an amazing thing. Time management is like this, like, vortex of amazingness that if you change your mindset around it, again, you have all this energy, you come to this, now I have a smaller block of time to get the same thing done, you do it efficiently. There's that old saying, if you want something done, give it to somebody who's busy. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, right? And I think we found, as we were going down this path, both of us have spent a lot more time. I mean, it's been a really, really hard last quarter because we're working our butts off on many different things, but I actually feel very good about it, and I have good energy about it, and I feel positive about it, and I don't feel like, yeah, it's been some grindiness here and there, because I mean that's just the way it is, but it's been kind of good grindiness, if I can say.
Yeah, it's true. I think that you and I have had a lot of conversations in the past couple months around, like, we work really hard. It's who we are. Like, lots of people work really hard, but it's like we work a lot. And, so I think too, again, back to the, whether it's hamster wheel or infinite or finite or whatever it is, it's like adding something new to the mix really gives energy and life to everything else, right? Like, I think that really in anything, exposure to something new can just stimulate so many different things. And I think for us too, it's a nice time. The world is really changing. We see that. I think everyone around hanging out on this podcast probably sees that. So yeah, to be able to have conversations, whether that's industry specific, like in AI, or if it's just about, how work and life and balance is changing, which is going to be represented on Two Babies in a Business, I think is really interesting. I think you'll see the CIPR team pop up on both podcasts too. Obviously, they're along for this journey and this ride. And Emily, who's made a few guest appearances as our producer, she will continue to be our producer on both shows. She's a very valuable voice for us, and we respect her opinions. No one can tell us that, like, I don't know if that was good, like Emily can. So we need her around to keep us humble. But yeah, like you said, I'm excited. I think there's lots of very interesting things to come. So super excited about the launch of the Tourism AI Network. It's been an exciting build, but also an exciting launch, and really excited to have people kind of watch that Two Babies in a Business brand just kind of rebloom. I feel like it was out there for a while, and yeah, little maybe full circle moment.
Well, it's kind of funny too, because I was reflecting on Two Babies in a Business in this podcast, and sort of we started this podcast with a very deliberate sort of goal, which was completely SEO focused. So, and then we got away from that a little bit deliberately. And this year was very kind of just a little bit more life focused. But I really personally think on the direction you're going is a really important conversation. Women entrepreneurs, women in business, moms supporting business, working in business, all that kind of stuff. I think it's just a really important conversation, because, as you mentioned, a lot is changing, including the nature of work itself. And I think those are probably the types of conversations you guys are going to be having to some extent, amongst other things. And I think both sort of organizations will be probably hitting on that quite a bit. But really, the nature of work is changing. And so what does that mean? And, again, back to finite versus infinite, it's like, the world of possibilities is opening up in new ways, in ways that they've never been before. And so I'm really excited for both of us to have those conversations. And like I said, maybe once in a while come back and have some conversations together, but probably a little less than we do now.
Well, we have a lot of conversations together.
True. Just on the podcast, I mean.
All right. So to close off season 2, Peter, what are some of your highlights? Some of the things that you enjoyed this season, what we've learned, what we've talked about?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the highlight of this season, or I guess this year, has really been this reflection on where am I, what am I doing, and what do I want to be when I grow up. And I think that, you know, the last few years have been very impactful. I guess, probably I'm 44 years old, probably, started my midlife crisis somewhere in and around the time of COVID. And so, went through a very, very big transformation physically, lost 50 pounds, got into fighting, all that kind of stuff. That was amazing. And then I feel like the last more year to or so has been very transformational on the business side of things for me personally as an entrepreneur. Where am I going? What do I want to do? A lot of clarity, and so that's been really exciting. So I think just this kind of clarity of vision, of direction, and sort of now being able to actually put, I guess, thought to action, which is where we are today and what we're talking about today. So that's been kind of my highlight for the year. How about yourself?
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of different people this season. We've had lots of guests. So for me, it was really rewarding to get to have different conversations and see where people were at. I think it was interesting too to just have conversations. I think that I came to a lot of different realizations live on this podcast. I talked about AI a lot, but I think came to a few really big moments in that podcast where I don't think a listener really realized that at that moment is where I baked an idea that now I tout all the time. The AI revolution, just think social media. Yeah, so I think it's been a really valuable thing. Obviously, one of the highlights was having the kids on. They listen to this podcast. We'll have it on in the car sometimes if we're reflecting on a conversation. So they listen to it. So it was really nice to have them on and talk through that. And I think too, I mentioned Emily, but seeing Emily come into her own too, as really stepping up as our producer and playing that role has been valuable. So, this season I feel like was a little all over the place. Not really, because we had a plan, but really kind of helped us bake. And I think if you followed along for the ride, you watched us grow and come to these realizations this season through these conversations. So thank you for being part of the journey, everyone.
Yes, thank you. And to please continue listening going forward. Again, slightly different formats. We'll be branching off slightly, but I think a little bit more focused and a little more narrow, if you will. So I think it'll be net better for everybody.
Totally. So thank you, everyone. That is a wrap on season 2 of Two Babies in a Business.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Two Babies in a Business. To learn more, visit ciprcommunications.com or catch us on our socials at ciprcoms.